Welcome back to Life's Biggest Questions. I'm Charlotte Dobre. There are several scientifically plausible ways in which a zombie apocalypse could become a reality, and some of them might surprise you. Starting things off with cordyceps. Cordyceps are a type of killer parasitic fungus. They attack different species of insects in Africa. The spores of the fungus infect and take over the brains of the insects. With the case of ants, the fungus instructs the ant to climb up the stalk of a plant to about 25 centimeters above the ground, and then attach itself to the underside of a leaf. When the ant dies, the fungus grows a stalk out of its head, only to infect yet another ant that comes along. The cycle is never ending. There are many types of cordyceps that are catered to many species of insects. Who knows, maybe Ophiocordyceps could evolve so that they could infect humans. Cordyceps are so infectious they can wipe out an entire colony of ants. Human cordyceps might not result in the cannibalistic zombies we are accustomed to, but it's still pretty scary to think about, isn't it? Next up, neurotoxins. Neurotoxins are a type of poison that hinder your bodily functions to the point that you could be considered technically dead. The poison that comes from the Japanese blowfish, fugu, has the capability to do this. Once the victim is in this state, they can be brought back with either drugs or alkaloids, and then, once they are brought back, the victim is in a trance-like state with absolutely no memory, but they're still able to do basic tasks like eating and sleeping. So they're basically a zombie. Sound impossible? It's already happened. Clairvius Narcisse was a Haitian man who was declared dead and buried in 1962. 18 years later, he was found wandering around a Haitian village. Even though it's possible to use neurotoxin to create zombieism in this way, the zombies might not be angry cannibals. Keywords: might not. Next up, brain parasite, like Toxoplasma gondii, which is most commonly found in rats. If a rat becomes infected with Toxoplasma gondii, its brain starts doing all kinds of weird things. Once infected, instead of being fearful of a cat and running away, the rat starts to seek out cats. The infected brain of a rat will seek out cats because it's attracted to the smell of their urine. Weird. The rat will find a cat, be eaten by it, and then the parasite jumps onto the cat where it can breed. There have been cases of Toxoplasma gondii that affect humans, who got it from their cats. In fact, half the population of Earth may already be infected with it. There are studies that have shown that a human that's infected with Toxoplasma gondii suffers from a change in their personality, and they have a higher chance of going mentally insane. It is highly unlikely that a brain parasite would naturally evolve to affect humans in a way that could result in a zombie apocalypse. But what if a brain parasite was engineered through a biological weapons program? Biological warfare is something that's always been tested, in both government labs and possibly by independent organizations. Who knows what kind of sicknesses or parasites could come out of a biological weapons program? Maybe one that could create a zombie apocalypse. What about a drug? Could a type of drug be created that would cause humans to eat other humans? Well, remember bath salts? Back in 2012, a naked man named Rudy Eugene viciously attacked a 66-year-old homeless man and chewed off his face. It was reported that Rudy was under the influence of bath salts at the time. The homeless man, Popo, is now completely blind from this incident. Humans are one brain chemical away from becoming a mindless killing machine. That chemical is serotonin. If a disease or parasite took away the brain's ability to absorb that chemical, like, I don't know, a genetically modified or mutant version of mad cow disease for instance, we would all basically just start killing each other. Mad cow disease is spread through infected meat products. If one infected batch hits the shelves and humans become infected, and the virus could be transmitted through a bite, you could have a full-on zombie apocalypse on your hands. As explained in this video, there are many ways in which a zombie apocalypse could become a reality. Diseases and parasites have the capability to evolve, just like every living organism on this planet. They can also be genetically engineered and used as a biochemical weapon. Let's just hope humanity doesn't get to the point where we unleash a zombie apocalypse on ourselves. Hello and welcome back to Life's Biggest Questions, the channel that imagines the impossible. I'm your host, Charlotte Dobre, and if you love zombies, make sure you give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more great questions just like this one. Picture this. While working on a biochemical weapon, a secret US government facility accidentally creates a disease that would create real-life zombies. Of course, like with most zombie stories, the disease somehow gets out of the laboratory and begins to spread, affecting first the United States and then the rest of the world. Before long, the entire world is engulfed in a full-fledged zombie apocalypse. We've all seen what happens with zombie apocalypse scenarios on shows like The Walking Dead, but is that really how things would play out in reality? Today, Life's Biggest Questions asks, what if zombies were real. What the makers of The Walking Dead don't want you to know is that there are actually a lot of technicalities that would make the chances of a zombie apocalypse slim to none. Let's start with the fact that a zombie virus spreads by bites. Do you know how inefficient biting is as a way for diseases to spread? It would spread incredibly slowly because in order for new zombies to be made, zombies have to walk from place to place. Once bitten, the victim dies and then has to come back to life, as it were, as a zombie. It would take months, if not years, for a zombie virus to spread further than a state, let alone spread across an entire country or the world. If zombies were real, they definitely wouldn't be able to remain intact when it comes to the heat, and the disease that makes them zombies wouldn't be able to spread to warmer, humid parts of the globe. Let me explain. Rotting flesh and the hot, baking sun do not mix. Heat speeds up the growth of bacteria, which feasts on anything without a healthy immune system. Last time I checked, zombies are dead, so they don't have immune systems. We know that dead bodies get bloated because of gases within their stomachs created by bacteria. In warm, humid areas, zombies would get bloated much sooner, and then, wait for it, they would start to explode. I know, right? Exploding zombies! Sounds like the perfect band name, but you definitely wouldn't want any of that nasty exploding zombie juice on you. One of the safest places to be if zombies were real is the desert. Dry heat and wind also mummifies dead bodies. The only way a zombie apocalypse could ever happen is if it took place during the cooler months, in colder parts of the globe. But even then, the chances of a zombie doomsday scenario are so unlikely. Zombies couldn't survive in really cold parts of the globe either, because, well, they would essentially freeze. We as humans avoid the cold. We wear jackets, we stay inside. But zombies are dumb. They don't know that walking around in the frigid winter will essentially make them rotting flesh popsicles. Flesh popsicles don't walk around biting people. They stay put. Have you ever noticed that whenever you see a movie or TV show about a zombie apocalypse, it always takes place after the military has been completely wiped out by it? Little to no explanation is offered for why the zombie virus was able to spread so quickly and efficiently without intervention. In reality, this wouldn't happen. In response to a zombie apocalypse, the military would undoubtedly intervene and likely stop it from getting out of control. There is no way a zombie situation could not be contained by a really powerful military intervention. If the army can kill millions of armed soldiers, there is no way a bunch of dopey zombies could stand a chance. Zombies don't know how to hide. They can't run very well, they can't use guns, and they have no idea when they're in danger. They just mindlessly lurk around looking for living things to bite. And furthermore, the United States has an armed populace. Almost half of American households have at least one gun, and 14 million people have hunting licenses. I'm not the biggest fan of the Second Amendment, but it would definitely come in handy in the event of a zombie apocalypse. And lastly, there are really hardcore government organizations that exist that take the spread of diseases very seriously. Take the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the World Health Organization. Whenever there's a disease outbreak of concern, flights are canceled, you can't travel across borders. A good example, when the SARS outbreak happened, only 43 people died in the US. There is no way a slow-spreading disease like zombieism would claim so many victims simply because there's no way it could spread very far without intervention. So fear not, dear subscribers of Life's Biggest Questions. If zombies were real, they wouldn't be real for very long.
Zombies, brain-dead biohazards coming for you and your motor neuron functions. In every zombie movie or book, things are, pretty bad. Zombies are running amok and seem hell-bent on turning every living being into one of them until the world has no more humans left and the grisly infected are ruling. Nobody likes an apocalypse. Netflix and chilling is, just way nicer. Luckily, the world of zombies exists mainly on Netflix and on your screens, but what if it was real life? What if the zombie apocalypse was coming? Hello and welcome back to Life's Biggest Questions, the channel that likes to cover a breadth of topics from science to history, politics to pop culture. We believe all questions are worth answering, especially ones so popular as this. I'm your host Rebecca Felgate, and today I'm asking, what if a zombie apocalypse happened in 7 days? Before we get into this video, I want to ask you guys if you have a zombie apocalypse plan. I know a lot of people do. Let me know yours in the comment section down below. Also, while you're down there, why don't you leave a thumbs up on this video, pretty please? That way we'll know you like this kind of content and we can make even more. Also, while you're down there, if you want to connect with anyone who went into making this video, there are links to our social media in the description box. Okay, zombies, The Walking Dead. This is impossible, right? It'll never happen. Well, 1, that's never gonna stop us playing What If, but 2, it's not as impossible as you think. Zombies are infected beings sent a little mad and chaotic. It is possible that a sickness could infect humans, creating a worldwide pandemic. A zombie apocalypse is basically a pandemic with some demonic connotations. We haven't had a pandemic in a good long while, the closest perhaps being the Ebola outbreak. The worst pandemics in recent history were the Spanish flu outbreak in 1918, which infected 500 million and killed up to 50 million people. And of course, if we go further back, the plague of the 1300s absolutely ravaged Europe, Africa, and Asia, killing at least approximately 60% of the population of Europe. The bad news for a zombie pandemic is that humans are living in closer proximity than ever, but the good news is that we're experienced, better educated, and equipped to deal with it. Assuming we knew we had 7 days until the total outbreak of a zombie pandemic, I'm sure that nations would be getting themselves prepared. The key to quelling an outbreak of sickness is hygiene and quarantine. Civilians would be issued guidelines on how to stay safe. They'd be advised to prepare a full-body biohazard suit to best of their abilities. The key to not getting infected is not coming into contact after all. Centers would be set up to try and detain the sick to stop the spread. Borders would be closed to stop the transportation of the sickness, which may well generate chaos and pandemonium as roads become gridlocked with people who are trying to travel. Every zombie movie you have ever watched seems to highlight the importance of food, water, medical supplies, and weaponry, and perhaps for good reason. These will be the things that you need to keep alive. Also important in survival kits would be torches, matches, water purifying tablets, and equipment to make shelters, the kinds of things that you would need to stay alive in the wilderness, which you may very well have to do, but we will get back to that. As people try and get through this, shops and supply stores will get hectic. People will be clambering all over one another to get tinned food, bottled water, and the like. Fights and riots will break out, and there'd be widespread looting. In countries such as the UK, yeah, this will be vicious, but imagine in America where they have guns. A lot of people would be injured in the chaos, so you'd need to be savvy about where you sourced your food and when. We would need to team up and form packs if we wanted a better chance of survival. Cities, despite having more resources to plunder, would be an absolute nightmare in a zombie apocalypse. If you had 7 days advance warning, my advice would be stock up and get out by any means possible. Yes, roads will be jammed, but perhaps it is worth trying to make it out in some kind of apocalypse carpool, or load up bikes and get on out of there. Remote areas with good supplies would be the best option, as would nuclear bunkers, but in those you're pretty trapped. Imagine if an infected person got in. Ugh. It is not totally clear what involvement the military would play in a zombie apocalypse, and perhaps it would vary country by country. Perhaps in more corrupt societies, military involvement would be used to protect members of high society, but to be honest, the more people die, the more zombies there are, the bigger the threat. So it is in the national interest to provide as much protection as possible. If the apocalypse was upon us, world leaders would have emergency meetings as to how to cope with the issue. Maybe in this day and age we can find a way to round up all of the zombies in one place and nuke them. Isn't nuking them not always the answer? Zombies can't fly, but warplanes can. Sure, the world might become a war zone and civilians might die, but that's just what happens in an apocalypse. You know what zombies can't do either? Swim, or at least they can't swim vast distances. If I had the choice, I'd like to be on a nicely stocked ocean liner and hitting the open seas, sailing away from those infected lands and finding me a nice island to live on peacefully. Coconuts galore. If anyone infected made it on board, toss them in the ocean and be done with them. Although, what if, say, a shark or a killer whale ate that zombie? Would they then become infected? The ocean getaway plan wouldn't be so fun then if all marine life were coming at us. Can animals even be infected? That is a whole different kettle of zombie fish we don't even have time for. One final thought. Say the zombies do get what they want and, despite the unlikelihood, take over the world. What then? Can zombies be sentient? Will they eventually evolve into beings of higher intelligence like humans did from cavemen? Are they just a new breed, a new wave of evolution? Or will they simply run ravage and die out, leaving the earth uninhabited? If it is just humans that die out, will animals thrive? Who will be the next apex predator? Who will be the next intelligent being? What will life on earth look like in the next million years? Oof, all this thinking. Actually, you know what? Maybe it's better to be a zombie and just enjoy the simple delights of brain sucking without all this incessant pondering. Although, of course, here at Life's Biggest Questions, we don't think so. Thinking is pretty great. So, to summarize, if we had just 7 days notice, I'm imagining those who already have a good zombie apocalypse plan and are already pretty stocked up would have a better chance of survival. There'd be chaos, carnage, military intervention, and nukes. But you know what? Humans have faced some tough stuff in the past, and in terms of sickness and chaos, do you know what? I think we would find a way to get through it. Many of us may die, but I think humans will eventually thrive. But maybe I'm just forever the optimist.
Hello and welcome back to Life's Biggest Questions. I'm Ron Mackenzie Lafergie. Humanity has been pretty obsessed with zombies for decades. Countless films, shows, novels, and comics have been created on the subject and delve into what would happen in a world of zombies. And now it's our turn. If you like this video, head over to Top 10 Nerd. It's a sister channel hosted by myself and a couple nerdy ladies, and you can find all sorts of nerdy videos on anything from comic books to Harry Potter to Star Wars. Now get ready, it's time to ask the question, what if The Walking Dead was real? First of all, there would be a significant change to how death was dealt with. Death would be far more common. In a world of such danger, where humanity is once again cast into the role of prey, survivors would need to learn to accept death as a normal part of life. Unexpected death would once again be a relatively common occurrence, and not just at the hands of the zombies. Disease would also be a huge problem. With little to no access to medicine or medical professionals, even diseases that are considered relatively innocuous now could be fatal in a world infested by zombies. Particularly a few years in, any medicine that hadn't already been taken and used would likely have expired and no longer be effective. Without new medicine being produced or vaccinations being administered, disease would become much more prevalent and would be more deadly. This problem would be further exacerbated by the limited amounts of cleaning supplies, which would lead to a buildup of dangerous bacteria. On that topic, a number of other supplies would eventually become unusable as well. After a couple years, most gasoline would be ineffective. As years went on, batteries would begin to lose their charge, so flashlights, radios, computers, cars, and worst of all, Game Boys would be eventually unusable without an alternative source of power. Humanity would likely split into smaller groups like we see in Walking Dead. We would likely form groups similar to those of our ancestors in the Pleistocene era. This could actually be beneficial, since living closer to our evolutionary environment could have positive effects on human psychology. However, as I'm sure you know, humans tend to take group membership a bit too far, which would lead to infighting amongst various groups as seen in The Walking Dead. That said, all would not be lost. As stated in our video, How Could You Survive a Zombie Apocalypse?, one very effective strategy would be to move to more secluded areas. In these places, like islands or difficult to access spots, zombies would have trouble getting there, particularly if defenses were put in place. This would allow people to rebuild and perhaps create a new society. But how can a new society come about in a world infested by zombies? Well, one thing that is often left out of zombie films and shows is the idea that the zombies would eventually dwindle in numbers, and even disappear completely. While there are a lot of them, if one or many groups of survivors manage to dig in and find an easily defensible area, they could very well systematically exterminate the zombie threat. Particularly on smaller islands, the number of zombies would be somewhat limited. Since they don't reproduce, if the survivors were careful not to allow themselves to turn and continued luring zombies to their death, there would eventually be no more left. This would actually be relatively easy, especially if the zombies were as slow and easily dealt with as they are in The Walking Dead. There's also a good chance that the military would play a large role in the extermination. One issue that some have with Walking Dead is the near complete lack of military presence. This seems rather unrealistic. If random civilians are able to survive, chances are a fair number of soldiers trained for combat would as well. This would greatly facilitate the extermination of the zombie menace, and would also help to keep order amongst the survivors. Military states would probably be the norm, only giving way to more democratic systems once the zombie problem was gone. However, even if all the zombies were exterminated, there would still be long-lasting effects. If the virus remained, people would forever need to be highly cautious. One accidental death within a compound could cause someone to turn and attack others, like we saw when a certain character got sick in a certain building, died in the showers, and turned a number of people. I'm trying to avoid spoilers. You're welcome. As long as the virus was in effect, survivors would need to be constantly vigilant, or Granny might kill the whole family after dying in her sleep. And now we return to our question, what if The Walking Dead was real? Well, death and disease would become far more prevalent, as medicine and cleaning supplies become harder and harder to come by. Humanity would likely find itself in smaller tribes similar to that of our evolutionary environment. If a group found a secluded or defensible area, they could potentially begin to rebuild a sort of society, and even begin exterminating the zombie menace. There would likely be a good deal of military support in this extermination, but even with the zombies gone, life for the survivors would likely never be the same. Hello and welcome back to Life's Biggest Questions. I'm Ron Mackenzie Lafergie. If you watched our video entitled What If The Walking Dead Was Real, you'll know that a world of zombies would be rather different from the one we know now. But not all zombies are the slow, ambling ones we see in Walking Dead. If they were faster, like in World War Z, it would be a whole different ballgame. In this video, I'll discuss how a World War Z world would differ from our own, and how it would differ from that of The Walking Dead. If you want more crazy what-if videos, check out our biggest what-if playlist on the channel. Now get ready, it's time to ask the question, what if World War Z was real? Now, right off the bat, we're hit with a bit of a quandary. World War Z was originally a book and was then made into a film. And the book and the film are incredibly different from each other, to the point where some reviewers say that the only similarity between them is the title. For this reason, I'll focus on just the movie version, not because it's superior, but just because it's better known by more people. If you're interested, definitely check out the book. And while you're at it, check out the I Am Legend book, which is also quite different from the movie, and very good. If you've seen World War Z, you'll know that the zombies in the film were a far cry from your classic slow zombie. These were very quick and able to work together to a terrifying degree. The wall climbing scene should be enough to scare the daylights out of anyone. This would change up the tactics of the survivors a good deal, since you wouldn't be able to deal with them nearly as easily, and there would be fewer safe places to hide and defend. This means that humanity would need a good deal of cooperation and weaponry to deal with the zombie threat. Another big difference is the time it takes to turn into a zombie. In The Walking Dead, it can take hours or days for a person to die and turn into a zombie. This leads to some pretty tense moments and tearful goodbyes. In World War Z, however, it just takes 12 seconds. No time for a real goodbye, barely enough time to end one's life before turning. This can be both beneficial and harmful to survivors. When in the midst of a large fight, the short incubation period would make it incredibly difficult to remain aware of where your enemies are. It could be that the guy beside you who was fine 30 seconds ago will suddenly turn around and bite you in the neck. On the other hand, the short incubation period makes it near impossible for someone to hide the fact that they were bitten and infiltrate a secure area. So you wouldn't have to worry about the incredibly common trope in zombie films of someone hiding their bite only to later turn and attack their friends. I hate that trope so much. There is one further quirk that the World War Z zombies had that is incredibly important to the survival of mankind. They don't attack the sick or injured. This was because the virus wanted to prioritize hosts that would be better fit to spread it. This is something that was hinted at throughout the film, like when the zombies ignored the drunken homeless man and the soldier with the bum leg. And by the end, it was found to be the ultimate solution. A vaccine was created that could be administered to the population, which infected them with a disease that caused the zombies to become non-aggressive to them. This seems to be the best option for us if this was to become real, as it would allow us to collect ourselves and regroup. The cleanup and aftermath following the zombie war would also be very different in World War Z compared to Walking Dead. In Walking Dead, everyone is already infected, so people can turn even when all the zombies are gone. In World War Z, however, infection requires some sort of attack from a zombie. So if humanity managed to exterminate all the zombies, life could begin to return to normal. Well, slightly more normal. And now we return to our question, what if World War Z was real? Well, these faster and more cooperative zombies would take a hell of a lot more firepower and coordination to take out in the short term. Big crowds would be terrifying, as the horde would grow very quickly with the 12-second incubation period. Eventually, if we learned that they didn't attack the sick, we could create a vaccine that could allow us to more easily exterminate the zombie menace and try to rebuild society.
Zombies, zombies, zombies. They are running amok. You have a mission to complete, and on top of all of this, you are sent into an infected area with only a handgun and a few herbs to heal your wounds. How would you fare in the zombie apocalypse, and what would it look like? We are going to cover all these questions in today's Life's Biggest Question. So grab some first aid spray and watch out for that dude with the bag on his head with the chainsaw, because we are going to answer the question of what if Resident Evil was real.
Hasta luego.
As is tradition over here at Life's Biggest Questions, let's start off this video with a quick summary of what Resident Evil actually is. Resident Evil is one of the most popular video game franchises in history. It has stretched over 25 games and has been transported into 6 live-action movies. There's a ton of juice and history in this series, so I'm going to give you a general breakdown of what happens in these games. It starts with the Stairway to the Sun. It's a hidden area in East Africa that is supposed to hold a certain type of flower that potentially holds the key to unlocking immortality and bringing forth a new dawn of man. Scientist Oswald E. Spencer and a couple other eggheads get their hands on the flower and start trying to crack the code to see how this flower works. This leads them to heading up into the mountains where they live in a big mansion and try to find out how to make people live forever. But something about science is that it's very expensive, so they need to find a way to create funding to fuel their projects. They decide the best course of action would be to develop a pharmaceutical company that makes bioweapons for the military. Not the most ethical approach, but I bet they started to see the dollars roll in. Now this is how Umbrella was born. Oswald E. Spencer and his colleagues decided the best course of action would be to split into 3 different groups to focus on separate projects. The first breakthrough that was born via Umbrella would be the T virus. This is the standard zombie virus that we see throughout most of the games. When the host is infected, their mind starts to decay and they become violent, dangerous, and contagious. Now the T virus also has some potential to make the host extremely powerful, but the problem is that the brain always gets turned into mush. Then another discovery was made. It's the NE alpha parasite. This parasite attaches itself to the brainstem of the host and acts as a second brain. This allowed the creation of the Tyrant, which is actually a massive super soldier that is also a zombie. There are several iterations of the Tyrant project like Nemesis and Mr. X. These living weapons can take commands and are nearly impossible to kill. They can take a lot of damage. Outside of the advancements of the T virus, there's another virus called the G virus that has regenerative capabilities. And there's also a prototype virus that ends up in Albert Wesker that gives him some insane superpowers and makes him dress like someone from the Matrix.
Your feeble attempts only delay the inevitable.
Now all this super secret research of course leads to the virus leaking out. I mean, we wouldn't have a game or movies if everything went smoothly. We needed a little conflict so the players can feel like heroes. There's an outbreak of zombies up at a secluded mansion where the Umbrella research was happening. This leads the Special Tactics and Rescue Service team, otherwise known as the STARS, to go in and investigate. Think of the STARS team as a special ops team. They go in and investigate the mansion, learn about Umbrella's dirty deeds, and some of them are able to make it out with their lives. So just a little outbreak up in a secluded area, no big deal. Well, there's also a huge outbreak in Raccoon City. These zombies start running around all over the place and eating up everyone. So the STARS members are sent in again, but this time Umbrella decides they want to make sure that all the STARS members die, and they send in one of their aforementioned super weapons, Nemesis. This leads to more zombie shooting and finding out that the parasite within Nemesis can evolve and become even more powerful. But then the STARS eventually kill him. Then there's the whole cult in Spain that worships the parasite and is somewhat controlled by it, and then there's also a similar thing going on in Africa. Now I'm glossing over this because we have a lot to do, and I'm going to be honest with you, there are 25 games worth of story here, and I just don't have the time to cover it all. So I'm going to focus on the aspects of the lore that we have covered, because we're going to now shift gears and actually dive into the question of what if Resident Evil was real. So if Resident Evil was real, that would mean that there is a major corporation that has more power than God. Maybe they would be super smart with this power and not let it fall into the wrong hands. But this is Resident Evil, baby. The power starts in the wrong hands. So I'm going to skip past the fact of what this would mean for warfare because I covered that in the life's biggest questions of what if Nemesis was real. So let's look at this from the perspective of the people. Well, this would totally suck for all of us. Most likely there would be a massive cover-up of all the small outbreaks, so the information would be hard to come by. But once the public found out that the zombie virus was real, widespread terror would sweep over the world. Imagine watching on the news a bunch of people swarming each other and eating each other. This would lead to riots, revolution, and people spending whatever they could to try and get their hands on cures, which would almost likely be fake. There would be false cures all over the internet and droves of people buying them because they would be afraid of the zombie virus. Governments would start to be torn apart by their people. So this would lead to martial law being implemented to try and control everyone. We would see full-scale civil war, which might lead to the virus spreading even further because living conditions would become so poor everywhere. Then as the virus continued to spread, we would most likely see it mutate and create even more powerful zombies. Now people would start dying off in droves. This would force a real version of the Umbrella Corporation to make some sort of a cure, and let's say it works, stops the spread of the virus, and then the world is saved, hooray. Or the other option is that it doesn't work and this means the end of the earth as we know it. So happy.
It's your host, Shaderain, and welcome back to Life's Biggest Questions. If you have played the Resident Evil games or watched the movies, then you will be very familiar with the evil pharmaceutical company known as Umbrella. They are responsible for so many atrocities that if they were real, they would rank on a list of the worst things that have ever happened to humanity, higher than Adolf Hitler and the Black Plague. And guess what? We're going to figure out exactly how bad it would be with today's question of what if Umbrella was real. So call Chris Redfield because we are going to need some backup for this mission. If you are regular at Life's Biggest Questions, you know we like to do a quick breakdown on the topic before we dive into the question. So let's start with who is Umbrella? Well, Umbrella is the massive pharmaceutical company that is at the center of all the villainy involved in the Resident Evil video games and movies. The organization was started by 3 scientists, Oswald Oswald E. Spencer, Edward Ashford, and James Marcus. The three of them were the ones who found the progenitor virus. This is a virus that was in the DNA of a flower in West Africa, which was in a secret location known as the Stairway to the Sun. The progenitor virus had the potential to give humanity immortality. It could create a new race of superhumans that would have incredible abilities and be able to withstand any sort of infection and regenerate from all sorts of physical harm. It would create a new age of mankind. The struggle was cracking the code to this virus. This process takes tons of time, money, and morality, which Spencer, Ashford, and Marcus had very little of. This is why they started Umbrella, so they could fund their research to crack this code. Early tests of the progenitor virus created an offshoot called the T virus. This could make the person infected strong and more resilient, but it would quickly decay the brain and the anatomy of the person, making them into a zombie. Even though this isn't what the goal was, it was still a major breakthrough, so this virus was marketed to the American military as a weapon. This would give the people of Umbrella more money and more power to keep playing God. After you get deeper and deeper into this life-changing research, you can get a little suspicious of who might be lurking behind you. This paranoia got into Oswald E. Spencer's mind, and he decided to send out squads to kill off his colleagues, Edward Ashford and James Marcus. He took their research, and after this, there were new breakthroughs in the virus. The G virus was discovered. This would give the host regenerative capabilities, and a prototype virus was created that could give the host Matrix-like superpowers, but would only work on 1 in a million people who had the right biology. Everyone else would die and be turned into a horrible monster. With all this backstabbing, evil genius experimentation, and law-breaking, eventually there were leaks of the virus which led to mass zombie outbreaks and the government coming down on Umbrella. But even though it seemed like they had stopped, they continued to work in the shadows, developing the most dangerous weapon known to man, and along the way created different types of weaponized zombies. Now that you have a quick breakdown of who Umbrella is, let's get into what would happen if they were real. The whole mission objective of Umbrella is to push progress with the progenitor virus no matter what the cost. So we would probably see a massive company get buddy-buddy with the world's greatest governments. And because we know that they have no problem stabbing people in the back, they would most likely start selling viruses to competing governments. This would create a new nuclear war situation, with every world superpower having a zombie virus that they could fire off at any time but don't want to because it would lead to the end of the world. A whole new age of mutually assured destruction. Human testing would be the key to the progress of this virus. And with them having the support of the world governments, there would most likely be human trials going on in secret. Umbrella would be killing hundreds of thousands of people every year without it ever being broadcasted on the news. Anyone who would try to leak the information would most likely get the Jeffrey Epstein treatment. Eventually there would be advancements, and we would see versions of the virus that do everything Umbrella had hoped for. A version of the virus that would make infected people almost unkillable. So they would have the world saved, right? No way. Umbrella is an evil corporation run by evil geniuses. They are also a pharmaceutical company, and people who can live forever don't spend a lot of money on drugs to stay alive. The superpower-giving version of the progenitor virus would be only available to the rich and prominent people who can afford it. This would lead to superpowered rich snobs running around the world, and the rest of us who can't spend the billions on the key to eternal life left behind. They would continue to use us as lab rats so they can keep on making money. The poor get poorer and sicker, while the rich get superpowers. A pretty bleak existence for most of the population. In the worst possible scenario, we would have Umbrella find a version of the virus that is fatal but does not turn you into a zombie. A version of the virus that only they could make a solution for. They would then release this drug into the public, make millions of people sick, and get them stuck on prescription drugs that they hold all the patents for. They would now have found a way to siphon money from the rich and the poor and would quickly become one of the most powerful and threatening organizations on the planet. Nukes would be a thing of the past. Everyone would be looking for what Umbrella is going to crank out next.